Ladies and gentlemen, it is a beautiful day for costume and prop making. Actually, there's a heat wave going on right now. It's like 35 degrees outside, and it's definitely not a beautiful day to be doing anything, but usually it'd be a beautiful day. I'm Anthony at Chaos Rogue Designs, and today I'm going to be showing you all how to turn something like this, kind of works, into something a bit like this. Now, when you get a blueprint for something like an armor piece, a costume piece, you'll often find that it has instructions that go with it, and that's because normally you'll need to sort of curve bits of foam, sort of cut bits apart so you can stick them together in a certain way to actually get the shape you want. Normally with a gun blueprint it's a little bit different. Normally you just get the kind of side profile of it and you're kind of just expected to get on with it. And to be honest, usually that's good enough, but if you've not used a blueprint before, it can be a little bit intimidating. Now in this video I'm not going to be showing you sort of step by step how to make something, well how to make this one, but I'm going to be showing you what I do to kind of break down blueprints generally. If you do want to see sort of full build guides for weapons and guns, we have got a few of those planned in the future. But without further ado, let me take you to my workspace and I'll show you how it works. So probably the most important thing you're going to want to have alongside your blueprint is source images. You can find this sort of thing on Google usually, but if you want mad style points, take a few pictures yourself if you can. For the Dolch from Hunt Showdown here, I ended up using a different skin to the one I took pictures of, but the shape and detail are what I was after. This game is on the PS4, so I used its screenshot function on the in-game gun viewer. Now this feature is not super common, and if you're looking at something from a movie or an anime, you probably won't have access to this kind of thing, but even just a few screenshots will be better than nothing. I can't stress it enough, don't skimp on these as you're going to be using them a lot. Next up, you'll want to stick your blueprints together if they go over one page. Just make sure they line up as best you can. Once you've done that, you can carefully cut out the entire thing, and at this point as well you can go ahead and cut out any areas where there will be just empty space, like around the trigger for example. Now what I like to do is very basically annotate the blueprint. I find this is the easiest way to keep track of what bits I need to make multiple copies of and where those parts are supposed to go. I start off by labelling which parts I want to make separate from the main gun and things I'll put on later. So I usually make the trigger separate so I can smooth it easier, so that's one. Any kind of scope of course will be separate. Once you've got all the obvious ones out of the way, I always have a look for things that are going to be a little bit fiddly to make. So on my gun here I've got the firing hammer and also this little square piece here, so that's going to be separate as well. Oh, the barrel on my gun is also a plastic tube which I wrapped in foam, so again that's going to be separate. I said separate a lot of times there, didn't I? Anyway, now I have all those separate bits out of the way, I know I only really have to focus on this main part here. So next up, I want to try and identify where the thinnest parts of my prop will be. In my case, those are the trigger guard and the chamber at the top here. Now I'm going to go ahead and label those as number 1. On my gun, these two parts are the same thickness, but if I decided to make, say, the chamber part thicker than the trigger guard, I would only label the trigger guard as number 1. So now I'm going to try and figure out what parts are next in order of thickness. So for me it's this bit here at the top. I decided to do that bit for the center part here as well, and those get labelled number 2. You can start to see why the source images are so important, I hope. Now it's a simple process, but I repeat that over and over, just labelling parts that stand out more than the ones before and giving them higher numbers. So number 3 will be above number 2, if there's anything thicker than what I've labelled number 3 it'll be 4, and so on and so on. If you use any kind of art software, you can imagine this being pretty similar to adding layers to your project on there. One thing just worth thinking about here, if you're approaching a lot of layers like over 5, so 5, 6, 7, and you're not using thin foam, you could end up making a really chunky prop. Now, I made that mistake with this samurai edge from Resident Evil. I love how it looks, but I used thick foam, and yeah, he's a big boy. Based on what foam you have available and how many layers there are, you can actually give a good calculation on how thick your prop is going to be. Now, it's not set in stone or anything, but for me, a gun grip is comfortable at just under 30mm wide usually. If I start to go over that, I'll usually end up simplifying my layers a bit so there's a few less, or just note that I will be using thinner foam for at least a few of them. Now if you're following my steps so far, I'd say you've got a blueprint that's just about ready to use, but finally just write down any notes, anything you are thinking about, anything you're unsure about. I mean, you have a pen in your hand, you might as well, right? You can also add a few bits here as well. I mean, I decided to make my pattern a bit more interesting and add a hollow border around this square on the side of my gun. I just thought it looked a little bit bland otherwise. And once you're all done with that, I think it's always worth taking a quick picture of the blueprint, because from here on out you're going to be cutting bits off it. To save on paper, you can just cut bits out of the one you've annotated, but I've printed off a couple just to show you why we did all this. So first off, we have number 1, which will be the centre of your prop, which you can transfer over to foam right away. Now next up, you'll want to cut away all the bits that are labelled number 1 on the blueprint. This will give you the shape or shapes for your second layer, and you're usually going to want to have a couple of these, one for each side of the gun, or prop or sword, whatever you're making. Now after that, you can go ahead and remove everything that's labelled 2, so only 3 and above are remaining. And then we just go up and up from there, but if you follow the steps you've added to your blueprints, you're going to end up with a prop with lots of detailed layers, which is going to look crazy good, and it will also be to scale. Now the best thing about doing it like this is you can use this method with any blueprint, and if you're building something really big and complex like a rifle, that blueprint can look kind of intimidating, but following what you've learned in this video will help you simplify things and will hopefully stop you getting overwhelmed. As I said at the beginning of the video, we have also got some sort of build guides underway, also open to recommendations for them as well. If there's any guns you guys want to see being made, I'll see what I can do. If you've made it this far into the video, I will presume that you did like the video. Please hit the like button, that'd be awesome. Subscribe if you want to know when our next videos go live. And also, if you want to check us out on social media, we are on Twitter, that's Chaos Rogue Designs on Twitter. We're on Instagram, which is Chaos Rogue Designs UK. And we even stream infrequently on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/CR Designs. Links for everything are in the description below. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.